This is Derek Galanis. Come check me out on Deeks Jojo, where we have an uncensored view of the fight game. The highs, the lows, everything in between. We hold nothing back on Deeks Dojo. And if I know you in the MMA fight world, I'm going to talk about you, believe me.
All right, so I'm here with Derek Galanis, and it's good to have him back. I haven't had him here in a while, but he's a guy I like to have on a lot. He's actually one of the guys who has like a official show in my pantheon of shows, I would say, Deke's Dojo. And yeah, Derek, it's good to have you back on, and we're going to be discussing this Conor Benn Zuffa boxing leave matchroom situation. So, Derek, for anyone who's not familiar with you since the last few shows, maybe kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, well, Todd, you got Deeks Dojo started, right? Like I think we came together on the criminal thing, right? I had just gotten out of prison. I was promoting my brother's deals with Hunter Biden and my other book, Greed and Fear. And we went on a couple times and we found a love for MMA too, and that we had in common. And eventually I broke off the criminal stuff. Just I got tired of it. I got my brother before Congress, and I focus on what my love is, and that's martial arts. So we're both there together, man.
Sorry. So, yeah. Now, as far as how were the sales of the books going? That you were trying to kind of.
Oh, Todd, they never worked out in a financial sense, right? But listen, I mean, look, the whole world today is videos and stuff like that, and they give me like that's my base, my foundation, right? So I'm glad I put them together. You don't have much else to do in prison, so I made good use of the time. But they certainly didn't make me any money. They gave me some commissary while I was away, that's for sure.
Now, as far as like I know you're a big boxing guy too, not just MMA, and this seems to be the flavor of the month story, so to speak. What's your take on what's going on with this Conor Benn Zuffa matchroom type deal?
Yeah, I mean, I got to set the stage here. Oh, well, of course, I was a boxing fan before MMA ever existed, man. I was doing karate just because boxing wasn't something everybody could do back then. And one of the not one of the first, I was probably a teenager, and I saw Connor's father, Nigel Benn, the Dark Destroyer, in his first network appearance in the U.S. Excuse me, and he was fighting Michael Watson. And I remember they made a big deal out of it. They said they compared, Ben to Big Ben, the clock, in England, and Michael Watson to, who was it, Sherlock Holmes Elementary, my dear Watson. And the ironic thing was that Watson, who was not favored to win, knocked Ben out. Like Ben's style was come forward and I punch until you fall down. And Watson was just good and durable and as good as Ben was, and eventually he got him out of there. And that was a kind of a wake up call for Ben where he had to learn how to box more. And so for me, now that we're talking about his son, it's like full circle, man. It's actually pretty surreal to see Connor fighting now, and to say nothing of like the Eubanks, right? Chris Eubanks and his son too. So the whole situation is kind of cool. I'll certainly say that.
Yeah, I really didn't know much about him until I watched this Matchroom special on Netflix about the Hearns, Eddie Hearn and his dad. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it was about the promotion, really. And Conor Benn was a fixture of this series. And I guess that was when he was having his drug, PED or whatever you want to call it, two failures, where Eddie was kind of trying to fix his image, so to speak. So there was a lot of that featured in the documentary, and obviously Conor Benn was a fixture of the documentary. Um, what do you think about this whole thing? I mean, kind of set the stage of what I was talking with Derek offline. That Eddie Hearn had kind of been blasting Dana in the Stuva boxing project, which seemed more like a early apex. Their position was we're building something. We're not buying something. This is going to be a slow process. Here we are in a year. We're building something. This is what we're doing. And he was really kind of teeing off on it. And one thing that stuck with me that he said was, I know Turki Alalshikh, and he can't possibly like this. This is not who he is. He's a guy who wants the biggest, the best, the biggest names, the best production, the top of the line. He doesn't want to be the guy who has a garage show going on with people that nobody know in front of 150, 200 people. And about a week after that, they signed Conor Benn, you know. So the only thing that I thought was a little odd that I want to ask about also when you get into this is for me, like if I paid 7 billion for these projects, the UFC and Zuffa boxing through TKO, and I don't even get his first fight on my network, it's got to be on Netflix. I own Paramount, and now I gotta let this fight be on Netflix. I wouldn't be happy about that, but you know, maybe there's something going on with that that I don't know about. But maybe just kind of talk about your thoughts about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of like in two parallel things happening at once, right? First of all, Eddie Hearn's father managed Nigel Benn in some of his English fights. I think Frank Warren had some involvement as well,
He
but
also managed the older Eubanks.
Oh,
Yeah, Chris
oh, okay.
Eubanks.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
And so you're talking about a long, long history, right? And then when Eddie takes over for his father and Connor's there, and the other thing I will say about it, everybody sort of knows this. It's not me talking smack, which I think I'm known for a little bit in the fight world, but Conor Benn doesn't have that much talent. Right. So the whole idea is like I've taken you in your name and I've gotten you into position. Now, what Conor Benn knows and Ryan Garcia knows and the whole world knows, talent doesn't really mean anything, right? Like there's a lot of talented fighters in Africa that will never get their break because they're just not in a position to get that break. So it is what it is. And it's hard to fault a kid like Conor Benn for to want to maximize his potential, right? Like, and he got offered 15 mil by Dana and Alalshikh, and he took it, right? And who can blame him, right? I mean, I talked a lot about this recently on Deke's Dojo, like Don King and Dana White, and people saying they're unscrupulous, and they are. But here's the thing: are the fighters going to take care of Dana White and Don King if they give more of the money to them? No, of course they're not. So you have this sort of conflict of interest set up no matter how the structure is. And by the way, we'll talk about that more in a little later. Structurally, what's happening is Dana is trying to do what he did with the UFC. He brought the professional wrestling Vince McMahon model to real fighting. And he obviously has gotten in Al-Sheikh's ear and said, this is how we own everything. This is how we control everything. And Al-Sheikh's obviously bought into it. Now, if Eddie Hearn was fooled, I was fooled too because Alalshikh seemed to be playing with everybody. Every single one of those promoters was over there. We're getting the best fights. Oh, this is really cool. And I really liked it. And by the way, I'll say this too, Todd. Boxing has had a real history of state involvement. Like the Rumble in the Jungle with Don King was Zaire, right? I think now it's Congo, right? Like that was money that Don King could get from a government to throw a fight there and make some big hoopla. The Mike Tyson fight with Buster Douglas, and before that, Tony Tubbs in Japan with Don King. Don King would get the Japanese government essentially to subsidize those big fights. So Saudi Arabia coming in and saying, "Hey, we've killed Khashoggi in an embassy. I want to clean up our image. We're going to do it through sports." That's a new take on it. But government's been involved with boxing forever in that sense. And so I wasn't surprised when they did it, and I really like the idea of doing it openly because, in theory, Al Sheikh's got access to everybody, like you just said. Eddie Hearn was complaining about. But apparently Dana's convinced him, no, the way we do this is the UFC WWE model, and Alalshikh bought it.
You think so? Because the only thing is, if he really bought it, then why isn't it on Paramount? Because that's who paid for all this Zuffa TKO sports, package, so to speak.
I don't know where they're going. I mean, I'm 10,000 feet from them, right? But maybe Todd, like, he convinced them, hey, we've got to have some shows on Paramount and do that because Alalshikh owns 60% of Zuffa and TKO Dana White, i.e. Dana White, owns only 40. So Turkey's in charge. Maybe he's saying I got to save the big fights for the pay-per-view where I can rake money in. I don't know.
But Netflix isn't a pay per view. You pay
Yeah,
a certain amount monthly. It's a streaming service, and I would assume if I'm Paramount and I pay 7 billion, I want those subscribers coming to me, not to Netflix.
I hear you. I don't have all those answers because I'm not as well versed on the business side of things as I should be in this game. But I haven't been on that other side. Your guy, which Mike, probably would have a better guess than me as to that.
Yeah, or James Wormy. Yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been watching them, but yeah, that part of it seems a little odd to me, unless he already had maybe some prior contractual obligations he had that he had to fulfill.
Yeah, I mean, God knows. I mean, behind the scenes, what was going on? Obviously, Alalshikh was courting everybody, right? We saw Frank Warren in Saudi Arabia. We saw Eddie Hearn in Saudi Arabia. We saw Dana in Saudi Arabia. Then all of a sudden, off he goes with Dana on this promotion. But yet, like you said, it still seems somewhat open. So we'll see how it all plays out, man. Listen, it's one thing to come in to a sport you've got to legitimize. And that's what Dana did, right? With hiring away Mark Ratner, all that with UFC. But you get the advantage of starting from the beginning. And I know they're trying to steal some of those same ideas. I think they want to make it 8 weight classes. They want to get rid of the Muhammad Ali Act so they can be the manager and the promoter at the same time and all that. But it's a lot easier to do that when you're starting fresh. Now he's trying to do it with a functioning sport, a worldwide sport too, right? And how's he going to control those other countries? Maybe citing Conor Benn's a version of trying to control that. He was very big on Michael Bisping early with the UFC. Who knows?
Well, they're saying it's a one fight deal and it might be like 15, 20 million. I would assume after the one fight, he's going to try to stay with them and get something similar. They gave him an easy fight. They gave him Regis Prograis, who's
Yep.
not
Yep.
even a great fight. Most people don't expect that fight to be competitive.
I think Progress recently lost to Haney, right?
Yeah.
Devin Haney beat him, I think. Yeah, I mean, look, and he's a lot smaller than Ben, which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Ben's been fighting guys bigger than him recently. Um, but I had heard that Eddie Hearn's fight with Connor was won. I didn't think he was getting 15 mil for one fight, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, they're saying that 15 million, like a guaranteed flat rate. Some people are saying he could get more, but most people are reporting it's 15, and that's what it's going to be.
Well, no reason he jumped ship. That no wonder, right? Like I totally get it. If someone's offering you 15 million, you're a marginal talent and all of that. You do it for sure. If it's one fight, I mean, I'm shocked that Dana would do that because what Dana's final game plan is, right? To have these guys under contract fighting for his 8 divisions, and I find that interesting because when Dana first got involved in the UFC, there were only like 4 divisions or whatever. But he's always tried to maintain the original 8 weight divisions. And why is that? Because boxing lore had been that the problem with boxing is there's too many divisions and blah, 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 blah. And that was a big thing. I don't know, Todd, if that's even real, right? Like, especially when you go to other countries where, and Jose Suleiman talked about this. Like, you Americans think like 4 pounds is no big deal, but when you're a starving fighter in Mexico and you win some money, you go eat, you can't make your weight class anymore. That's real. That's real life. Americans are just spoiled and rich and think it's no big deal because we have everything. And it's interesting to me that Dana White overlaid that in the UFC. Now he's trying to overlay it in Zuffa. And I don't know that it makes sense, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and the other thing that surprises me a little bit is boxers already know that they're underpaying their talent in MMA, and if they get things the way they want, that's exactly what they'll do in boxing too. They're not doing it now, obviously, but if they get what they want, which is, with the Ali Act and all that stuff, that's going to lead to them not paying people. That's ultimately what they want to do. They want to underpay boxers too. So it
Yep.
surprises me a little bit that other guys are climbing on board with this. I guess for 15 million, you couldn't say no, but guys who are of a name, why would they want to get involved with this unless the other entities get wiped out and they have no choice, I guess.
Well, Todd, like the pioneers, right, always have arrows in the back. Like there's going to be a bunch of Conor Benns to begin with, and we'll see if he can actually maneuver the ship. Because what Dana's trying to do is not as easy as everyone thinks. Now, listen, like he got the UFC legalized. Credit to him. He got Power Slap, or is what is it called? Power
Well,
Slap.
actually, SEG got it legalized in New Jersey first. James Wormy, that always makes him mad when people say that. He's like, look, Larry Hazard, and we did that stuff with him long before. You know, we had already got it legalized in a couple of. They got legalized in Nevada because they had those guys like Mark Ratner and Lorenzo Fertitta, who was on the Nevada State Control Board. They weren't letting anybody else get in Nevada, but when they bought the UFC, yeah, no problem, you know. But
Yeah,
before, no, the UFC can't be in Nevada until you guys buy it. Then it can be.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm speaking out of turn, right? Like it was legal in certain states. I remember they were throwing cards in Arizona still when it was illegal in Nevada. But I'm treating it like MMA was only legal once it got legalized in Nevada, and that's not true.
Yeah. So another thing that interests me, James's philosophy is he thinks, or his theory, I would say, not philosophy, but theory, is he thinks they're paying Ben this much. As you said, he's a marginal talent. So it gets the attention of other fighters who are actually talented. Say, wow, this guy's not even any good, and look what they're paying him. What are they going to pay me when my time comes? Imagine what they'll pay me when my time comes.
Yeah, I mean, so if I can make a prediction though, Todd, I think this world is way too big for any one person to crack. And Dana might be playing with Turki Alalshikh's checkbook, i.e., the checkbook of the Saudi Arabian kingdom, right? And that's very deep. So what he said is, hey, we can do this and make this happen. But boxing is, I mean, there's been such a it's for a while it was two promoters, right? It was Bob Arum and Don King in the US, Frank Warren in England, and then Cedric Kushner in South Africa, and that was almost the entire world. And then anything that happened in Asia was completely separate and whatnot. The idea that you can unify all those interests in one, I'd like to see it. I mean, even the UFC, right, is smash as success as they are and everything, how often do they go to these foreign countries? Not that much, right? Like it's so no matter what, there's going to be a need for those other promoters. So like Eddie Hearn, I'm sure, and Frank Warren will survive in England no matter what happens because they need a minor league. But to create a big league like that is going to cost a lot of money, going to take a lot of time. And listen, I don't doubt Dana White on the legislation, right? He got it done in Nevada. He got it done for Power Slap, which is ridiculous. So maybe he can get the Muhammad Ali Act reversed, right? I mean, listen, remember the Muhammad Ali Act gave us Don King, so it wasn't perfect.
And now we see that King is suing Sela, the Saudis, as is Frank Warren for like $1 billion. Frank Warren suing. I don't know how much King is, but that seems to be the retaliation. Is you guys had deals with us and you went behind our backs, and you know now they're starting to kind of like the UFC, where the UFC is getting buried in lawsuits. They got two more. Now they got one, I guess, being represented for fans, saying that fans got ripped off on the pay-per-views because no one else could get on pay-per-view. So now they have a class action lawsuit for fans. I don't know if fans would get 10 cents a piece. I don't know. What are you going to pay like millions of fans?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm just so glad the pay-per-view era is dead, Todd, because during that time I couldn't afford all those pay-per-views. So thank God we're on Paramount, man. I mean, and let's be honest, it wasn't out of the goodness of Dana's heart, it was the pirating, right? Everybody had to pirate, so everybody was doing it, and Dana was losing money. So how do I change this? And it's a TV deal, obviously.
Now, what do you think? This is a tough question because it's hard to be in somebody's brain. What could Eddie Hearn do as a move to this? He said he's going to remain quiet. Before he was telling some people, I used to announce what I was going to do. I think I'm going to stop, doing that as much, being as transparent right away. But I don't know what his next move could be, because to counter, they took one of his biggest stars, so to speak, not from a talent standpoint, but from a name standpoint. I don't know how you would counter that.
Yeah, well, I had heard that Conor was on a one fight contract left with Hearn, so I don't know if it violates contract, right? Who could blame Conor for taking 15 mil like that? I think no matter what, and it doesn't matter what structure you have, there's need for regional promotions. So Hearn's been a regional promoter for most of his life in England, right? Him and his father. And that's not going to change because no matter what, even if Turki Alalshikh and Dana are successful, Hearn's going to need to develop talent in England. Now, the problem is obvious, right? Like when you're one of those local shows, like we have a ton of them in what's the local one in Tulsa for MMA, Todd?
XFN.
There you go. Like, right?
Hmm.
Like, and I'm sure Johnny Carson's guys fight that all the time. In San Francisco, it was Dragon House, right? Like, and so in boxing, that can happen. But then what happens? They're all going to leave to go to the big division, right? But Dana's got to get enough shows to make that valuable enough for enough people. So the sustainability of that is in question, right? Everybody's purse is not unlimited. Saudis got about as much as you can be as unlimited, and I don't know that they have enough to feed everybody. So these smaller promotions will survive at least for the immediate future, and we'll have to see how big Zuffa can get, and if people buy into this one title thing and this contained environment like they have for the UFC. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're telling the truth, but they're kind of talking. We're going to do these one-off super fights. Zuffa boxing is still going to be in a garage in Las Vegas. I don't know if that's true, but that seems to be what they're alluding to. That this is a one-off. This is something we're going to do on the side. Zuffa boxing is still going to be in the apex with people you have never heard of. I don't know if that's true, because even Dana White, he's got it. Dana White too. He's used to being the big dog. He's not used to being the guy that's getting made fun of by Eddie Hearn because the shows aren't as good. Yeah, I don't know if you watched that thing. It was classic. Like Eddie Hearn was saying, compared to my shows, these shows are absolute crap. You know what I mean? You're putting guys on that nobody's heard of in front of 150 people. Nobody cares about this stuff. That's what he was saying like a week ago, and people were laughing about it because it's true. And he's like, Turkey would be embarrassed to have his name associated with this because he said, I know this guy. He doesn't, this is not him. Not something he would
Yeah,
even want his name associated with, this kind of product.
yeah, it's kind of funny, Todd, when you think about it, and I go into depth in this on my show a little bit. Like, so back in the old days of pro wrestling, right? The NWA, they didn't really have a lot of big shows, a lot of local stuff, with like three rows of people and stuff. But they brought it to life through the magazines by
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, right? Like, so
They
it
have
was
some
almost
talent, though.
yeah, oh yeah, and it
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
became
Super
and
boxing, people are saying these guys are never going to be anything. Most people in,
well,
in boxing are like, these
well,
guys aren't talented.
maybe that's the behind the Conor Benn purchase, right? And maybe that I mean I imagine he's going to be a Zuffa promoted fighter, right? Like that's the
I
deal.
don't, that's the other thing that's weird. Like they said, when the announcement was made, it had him shaking hands with Dana White. Conor Benn signs with Zuffa Boxing. But when the fight comes out, the fight announcement, it's Conor Benn on Netflix, Ring Magazine. Now, Ring Magazine is part of Zuffa Box. That's Turkey's part of this whole entity. He
Yep.
has his Riyadh season. It's kind of confusing, really. You got Riyadh season, Ring Magazine, and then you got Zuffa Boxing. I think they should be all one thing if you're going to do it. If you really want to do it, it all needs to be one thing. Either call it Riyadh season, Zuffa Boxing, whatever, but one thing.
Well, the problem with that, Todd, is you got a lot of interests, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so everybody's got to have their company for the interests, and that's why even Zuffa is chopped up. It's 60% Sheik, it's 40% Dana. If you
Right.
TKO Riyadh, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reality is, look, I don't. I think what Dana is doing with Power Slap is laughable and ridiculous. I don't really think it should be a sport. I think what he's doing with boxing is noble. And I understand he wants to fix boxing and all of that. Some things are beyond fixing, though, right? Like there's nothing you can do to make something that's had its own history and whatnot and reverse it. And now, really, because does he want to make it perfect? No, he wants to make it perfect for him and Turki Alalshikh, right? Like the UFC is for him. Like that's perfect for him because he gets to keep most of the money. I don't think he's going to be able to do that at the end of the game. Like I think, look, we all get delusional by our own success, right? And that's totally natural. Whether you're a fighter in fighting or a promoter, like Dana's defied the world. He took something that $2 million that he had to get his friends to put up and took 10% of it, and he's made almost $1 billion, right? Like, and now he's found deep pockets, and he's going like, what is Alalshikh except his new Fertitta brothers? That's what it is, and he's convinced him in the same way he convinced the Fertitta brothers, hey, we can do this, and he's able to say to them, hey, we can do this because I've done it before. Well, who's failing in boxing right now? Al Heyman is failing. How did Al Heyman get his big start? He went to a bunch of hedge funds and he said, you see what Dana White's doing with UFC? Well, I can do that with boxing. We got a deeper history. We got a deeper path. We got a deeper schedule. And all I need is $400 million and I can own boxing. And what's happened to Al Heyman? He's crapped out recently, right? People talk about it a lot. Eventually, I think Dana's going to crap out because boxing is not only bigger than any one person, it's too fragmented in what it's been for so long that you can't get it under control like that. There's too many competing interests. And at the end of the day, you're talking about the fragility of a fighter, and nobody knows that better than people who have been in the ring, Todd, like you and me, right? Like a fighter wins or loses by a lot of times it's luck or mental state or stuff like that. Now, Dana's got that contained in the UFC because he owns everybody. And he's trying to do the same thing in boxing. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see.
Maybe these other entities could, I don't know, they have a hard time working together as is, but maybe they could try to pull their resources. But then you'd have to decide how are we going to divvy up the money and stuff. That could be complicated. But just as a survival tactic, maybe we pull our resources together. IBF, WBO, all this stuff. Eddie Hearn. Let's make one family, like a mafia family. One family. We'll have the head of the family, we'll have the capo, we'll have, all these guys, and we'll be one family against them. Maybe that could work.
So they've talked about unification of WBC and WBA before WBO existed, right? Like I've heard that for years, and you can't because of the self interest of everybody, right? So now you're talking about like another Zuffa coming in
But
to take the
survival
crown.
is self interest if they're taking all their people.
Well, I hear you, but my guess is that what will happen is even Alalshikh will break with Dana. Alalshikh will get back to just like Eddie Hearn said, wanting to put on the big fights and working with whatever promoter he needs to. Dana's obviously just convinced him, like, no, hey, we'll make it our entity and it'll be us. I don't even know why Alalshikh cares, right? Like they did this to put a good foot forward for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and make them not look like the misogynist, crazy kingdom that they are. And more power to them. I mean, like I said, there's always been state stuff in boxing overseas, and that's cool. But I don't think they need to make money off it to move forward, right? Even if they break even, they're just fine. Dana, I'm sure, is interested in the money, but who knows? At this point, Dana doesn't need money either. Maybe it's just all ego, man.
I don't know. Turkey has kind of talked like Dana. We're going to wipe out these other people. So it sounds like he's
Ah,
kind of on board with Dana's mindset with this project.
well, let's see what big fights he puts on next because he's got to work with everybody, right? Like he's been putting on all those big English heavyweight fights, right? If you want to put those guys in the same ring together, that's why Joshua and Tyson Fury's never happened, right? Because they can't get them to work together. And finally, we had Alalshikh who could bring all the money in the world and get the promoters to work together. So if we now make this a singular thing, I think it's going to be worse for boxing, not better. I liked having Alalshikh being able to bring everyone together just through money. So yeah, for me, it doesn't look. And at the very least, it's going to get worse before it gets better now.
One thing I thought that Eddie Hearn said was interesting that I haven't heard too many people maybe give in-depth opinions on was he was saying, okay, look, you know how they've signed Jayo Bataya,
Yeah.
and he's wanting to do this unification bout. I forgot who it was with, but
Yep.
but Eddie Hearn was saying, I think Jose Suleiman WBC, he's WBO or WBC, I forgot. Which one he
So
hit?
Jai is IBF, and he might have won one other one
Right,
recently.
but what he's saying and with Suleiman with them because they want to do
He's
this
WBC.
unification fight in Zuffa boxing. And he's saying, look, they're not going to recognize you. They're not going to bring you in the ring. They're not going to recognize your belt. What they should just do, because he said it's going to go like this eventually. What they should do is just go like this right now, and say, look, our belt's not going to be on the line because you don't want us in there anyway. You don't want to work with us. This isn't going to be a unification belt. We're not going to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, well, Todd, interesting that you say that because it was a unification under the Zuffa banner. And the last time I saw the promotional, it went now to Zuffa Cruiserweight title. So it was almost like they eliminated the IBF and the other title. And obviously, the reason the sanction fees are there.
All right, Derek. So talk to me about this Jai Opataya fight in Zuffa. How now it looks like it may not be unification. Um, I know that's something he wanted. He said he'd be upset if it wasn't, but maybe kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, at first when they announced the fight, they announced it as unification. Now suddenly it's just for the Zuffa title. So Todd, maybe it's what you said. Like Zuffa's realizing right away, like let's just cut these guys out of the pie. And let's be honest, the sanctioning bodies only exist for recognition purposes, right? So the moment you say, hey, you don't matter anymore because guess what, we don't need you, we have the money and we can make our own title. It's over for them. So if Zuffa wants to say this is the cruiserweight world title, and like it's a little bit like Francis Ngannou taking his world title from the UFC with him, like, hey, I'm still world champ, I haven't lost in MMA, and so that's seemingly what they're doing because the sanctioning body take fees from the fights, and so obviously they're getting cut out of their fees, they're getting cut out of the whole thing. So yeah, they're not going to recognize, but Zuffa said that was their direction anyway. So God bless.
Yeah, but that's not what Jai wanted. Jai was under the impression that this was going to be a unified battle, even if he signed for Zuffa boxing. And he said, if it's not, I'm going to be pretty upset.
But we'll see what Jai says. I think money solves all disputes, right? If Turkey gives him a little bit more cash and he doesn't have to pay sanctioning fees, he may find that okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I want to know is what do you think about Hearn saying that the WBC or WBO should split with them immediately? How does that help them if they do instead of Zuffa, if it had been them doing it first?
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, everybody's after money, and the sanctioning bodies need fights to get money, right? And then, so what it helps is guys like Hearn, who might have some cruiserweights that they can match for the title. So then Hearn's got a marketable fight he can promote, and then the sanctioning bodies make money off that. So maybe Hearn wants that anyway, right? Yeah, give us the sanctioning bodies that have governed boxing for the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years anyway. Some of them, look, I remember when the WBO came around, right? And the way we dealt with it in America was to act like the WBO didn't exist. And the problem with it was the rest of the world recognized the WBO. So as our magazines and everything took this turn and they wouldn't even list them as WBO champions, the rest of the world didn't care. That's why Chris Eubank's father was WBO champ forever. So was oh, good. Who's the Welsh fighter that Calzaghe was WBO champ for years, and that was at a time when the U.S. wasn't recognizing it. So, I mean, it could very well be now that Zuffa starts doing its thing, and the sanctioning bodies just go on to other promoters and find other areas. There's so much money now in boxing. And I'll give you a something that I find amazing. So remember Buster Douglas Tyson in the Egg Dome in Tokyo. The next main event boxing match they had there was Naoya Inoue, which means it took all that time. But now finally, Japan has a hometown hero that they can put there and make that kind of money out of a dome like that. Like there is so much money in boxing regionally that places like Inoue hasn't really fought much out of Japan because he doesn't need to, and he makes tens of millions of dollars for it. So what Dana and Turki Alalshikh are trying to do is very noble, but I don't know that they're going to have the chance to do that because there's so much money in the sport floating around all over the world.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to ask about this whole WBO or WBC or sanctioning by splitting. Eddie seems to be embracing the old guard of boxing, even through this new controversy. Do you think that's a mistake?
Well, that's all Eddie knows and has, right? So
Right,
what
but
Eddie
not pivoting. Do you think it's a mistake?
well, what's he going to pivot to, right? He's odd man out at Zuffa. So like, I don't think Eddie didn't pivot. Everybody was in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh for the fights and providing their fighters. It's just that now Dana has talked Turki Alalshikh into partnering with him in a venture that he thinks will be the future of boxing. And we'll see. Like I said, just like I think Power Slap will fail, I think his effort will fail because there's too much money in too many diverse places. And one of the things about developing a fighter, Todd, developing a fighter is a very, very rough business to do. And it's so fragmented and whatnot. So I don't know if you can ever control that entirely in one place.
Now, as far as Power Slap has already failed. You said you
So,
think it
are they
will
out of
fail.
business?
No, I'm just saying, do you see them promoting out on the UFC's social media anymore? No. Do you really hear
No.
Dana saying we have more views than the NFL and Major League Baseball and soccer combined? No. They're still
I
having
heard it.
events, but did you see Paramount sign Power Slap? Nope. They're
No, I
still
did
they're
hear.
still free on Rumble, which nobody watches. To me,
I
Power
heard.
Slap is already dead. It's
I
over.
heard him saying, what did he say? He said, yeah, you bet against me, dude. Bet against me.
That was not
Uh,
something anybody invested in. That was just him. That's why I think it was so hard for him to let it die. But I think even him, from a public uh, perception or from a public presentation, Dana's not talking about Power Slap. That's all he talked about before the Zuffa Boxing Project came along. He was saying it's going to be bigger than the UFC. Everyone was laughing in his face. He said that with a straight face. It's going to be bigger than the. You think people are going to come to a stadium to watch two people slap each other? You think two people are going to fill the MGM Grand to watch two people slap each other? It's it's craziness. And
well,
we're all these elite Russian slappers. He said he was going to bring in like right at the beginning. That never happened. Never.
well, Todd, ego is a very dangerous thing in fighting and in life itself, right? Like your ego runs away with itself. And there it goes. Look, Dana did almost the impossible getting Power Slap sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. How do you justify that, man? I mean, I don't even
Money.
know. Yeah, oh,
They
there you
paid him
go.
off. They paid him off.
There you
And I
go.
think some of
Yeah.
the guys that involved in that said they regret it now. Because really it's just concussions. That's all it is. It's just sign me up for a concussion. I'll let you hit me as hard as you can, and I won't even try to move or defend myself. And I think no, you're not going to fill up a stadium of people to watch that. It's not going to happen. You'd have to be the most delusional person on planet Earth to think people are going to fill a 25,000 seat stadium, which is usually what UFC tries to operate in, to watch two people at a podium slap each other. It's not going to happen.
It's violence porn.
Yeah, but it's just not, there's no nuance to it. Once you've seen, and Miguel and I have been saying this from the very beginning, once you've seen a couple of power slap matches, you've seen them all. Either the person's going to fall down or they're not. That's it. Two people are going to slap each other. One of them is going to get knocked out or not, or neither. That's the only result can happen. One person gets knocked out or neither of them get, and their face gets kind of welted up over time. But that's the result. There is no other result. MMA, you got all this nuance. You have a bunch of different submissions. You caught all kinds of different ways guys can get knocked out: elbow, punch, knee, kick. All kinds of crazy stuff can happen. That's why crazy stuff does happen in MMA so much. But power slap, there's no nuance. You're gonna get knocked out or not. That's it.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, like in early days MMA, it was violence porn as well, right? To a certain extent. The guys weren't really trained in many things. I mean, and even Hoist, I mean, he's very well versed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I wouldn't say his stand-up was anything special. And maybe Dana thought the visceral atavistic urge in people would just love it, and he was wrong.
Well, I think the early UFCs had more nuance in power slap too, because it was almost like we were trying to make an epiphany. We were trying to, all of us are trying to see what would work in this situation. Who could make something work.
Yeah.
We had seen all these arts before. Some of us trained at taekwondo, karate, whatever, kempo,
Yep.
jitsu, judo, and all those people are sitting back wondering too, who's going to be able to make this stuff work? Who's going to win these fights? There was a lot of nuance in those fights. This isn't that. It's just which person's going to fall over first, or neither of them going to fall over. If neither of them fall over, you'll see. I think that's more exciting because you see more damage because neither of them fall over and they keep getting slapped and their face gets distorted. But that's the only result. It's either they're going to get their face distorted or they're going to get knocked out really quickly. Like one coin flip, first guy that slaps it, it's over. There's no nuance to that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad, like you said, and it has disappeared. I didn't notice specifically, but it was starting to intrude on the UFC cards.
Yeah, they were trying to prop it up on the UFC's platform. They were using this Dana White because he's obviously has so much power with the UFC. Was trying to prop up his own little science project on the UFC's platform, which a lot of people were mad about. They're like, we don't want to see this crap on the UFC's social media. Make a power slap social media and put it on there.
Ego, my man. I mean, look, this whole thing we're talking about on this show, Todd. I know we segued into Power Slap, but the Conor Benn situation, the Zuffa boxing thing, a lot of it is ego. You know, Dana's trying to fix boxing, so to speak, and make it the way he thinks it should be. A tall task, man, but that's his ego, right? He made UFC against all odds. Listen, there were a lot of Dana Whites, least of all me. I just didn't have the Fertitas as friends that I could go to and beg for their deep pockets and whatnot. So there were a lot of guys that knew it could be successful, and that's why there's a lot of fans. And he did the impossible. Give him credit, but he can't do it with boxing. I don't think it's going to work, man. And it didn't work for Power Slap, like you said. They're already gone.
Yeah, I think it's basically over. They're still trying to put on some events, but from a promotional standpoint, there's no juice behind it at all now.
Good.
Yeah, even Bob Maneri, I saw him. Dana, he gets on. Dana White goes on his podcast, The Note Boys. Bob Maneri is one of those guys, and he was telling the same thing. He's saying all power slap is if somebody gets slapped and someone's going to fall over, they don't. That's it. And Dana White was all defensive. He's like, what do you think MMA is? He's like, what are you talking about, man? Like, there's all kinds of things can happen in MMA. This is just two people slapping each other, and one guy's going to fall over or not. That's it. And Dana just couldn't accept it, and he was telling him to his face, "This has no nuance. There's nothing to this. You can watch one or two of these things, and that's what you're going to see the rest of the history of the sport. Two guys slapping each other, and one's going to fall over or not. That's it."
So you've heard Dana describe why the UFC works. He's like, fighting is something visceral in human beings. We get it and we like it. It's the atavistic urge. And sometimes we can take visions too far, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Dana thought, obviously, that slap fighting would be equal to MMA, which is really, really insulting to the whole martial arts community. A little surprising, too, because Dana understands that whole martial arts bend. He understands the place for jiu-jitsu and he respects it. He understands the place for boxing. I mean, he was one. I mean, he understands the whole martial arts. But maybe he thinks, and this could be like, people are like this. Guys become victims of their own success. I don't know if Dana's a billionaire, but he's pretty close. He's halfway there, right? Maybe he thinks people are so stupid and they're animals that this is going to work the same way. And it's like, no, dude, that's not going to work.
Yeah, I've never seen two people in the street say, "Let's slap each other and see who falls over first."
No.
Take this pool noodle and put it behind your back, and we'll see who can fall over first. No, when people get in a fight, they get in a fight. They don't say, "Well, hold up." you know, Here's a pool noodle. Put your hands behind your back. We're going to slap each other until someone falls over. No,
Right.
that's not
Well,
what fighting is. Fighting is fighting. Power slap is not that. It's something that they just made up. And he said he saw it on YouTube and saw the views. Dana White, there's a lot of projects that Dana White has failed on. I would say any project he's worked on himself that didn't have a bunch of money behind it, flop. The Ultimate Surfer, the Ultimate Skater, and it's all cut and paste of the UFC. Even Zuffa Boxing is a cut and paste of the UFC. Cut, paste, cut, paste. He has no original ideas. Zero. Power slap is a UFC presentation of two people slapping each other. Same concept, same production, a lot of the same people. He brings over announcers from the UFC, Bisping, and all these people. It's just a cut and paste, just like Zuffa boxing is, just like the Ultimate Skater was, the Ultimate Surfer was. You never saw those because those were failures right off the bat. You know, pretty much everything that hasn't been funded by somebody else flopped almost immediately. And this is on its way to flopping too. It is already flopped. It's over.
Well, Todd, listen, Winston Churchill said success is going from failure to failure with great enthusiasm, right? And look, I mean, his buddy Donald Trump, right? A failed businessman repeatedly over and over again in as many different things, right? Trump College, Trump University, Trump this, Trump that, the airlines, the casinos, and it didn't really matter. He just never stopped, and now he's the most powerful man in the world, right? Like, and it's weird how those things happen. A lot of times it's more about exuberance than it is even the idea itself. And I think maybe Dana's taken a little bit of that. And my father used to say it like most people are one trick ponies, right? Like they know one thing really well and that's what they do and that's it.
I think Dana White is a one trick pony. Like Eddie Hearn was saying, what is his vision? He says we don't have vision, but what is his vision? He's just doing the same thing he's always done. Now he's got doing fights in a little tiny arena with 150 people. If I he was saying if I did that, you guys would tear me a new ass if I put on a show like that.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit, Todd. We started, I think it's important just for the whole fighting thing. We started talking about how the NWA did that effectively, right? They'd have these little tiny shows, little tiny areas. And this is back to when ticket sales actually mattered for those little shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kept them alive through the magazine and like the 6 big events like Starcade and the rest of those ones they would throw throughout the year. And one of the things that happened through COVID with all of this, because that was gone, that was a thing of the past. And then COVID came, and then what happened? The Apex happened, right? And with the Apex, Dana realized, like, wait a minute, I need TV material, and I don't need these crowds. That's just a pain in the ass. And the Apex became a really convenient home for him. But those then are just like gym fights, which for the fighters and all that, I can't tell you, it's a whole different thing. Like, listen, in fighting, there's gym heroes, and then there's guys who shine in front of the crowd. Like, I admit, like, I was a gym hero. Like, I kick your ass in the gym, and I get in front of a crowd, and I just melt down. And some people are the other way around. But it changes the sport when you do that. And I think what Dana is thinking, like, well, I can save all this money, and I can still satisfy my TV partners by putting on production. But, at the end of the day, people look behind the fence, if you will. Like UFC's been real good about the apex of keeping you focused on the ring and the fight. But like in boxing, you want to see that crowd. The crowd is part of the show. It's part of the energy. Why do people go to live fights? It's the energy that's produced at those live fights. Otherwise, we'd all sit in the living room or in our bed and watch it on TV. And so Dana's trying to take out that fight energy and keep it going. To a certain extent, he's been successful with the UFC with the Apex. So I see why he's doing it with Zuffa, but I don't think he's going to be successful there.
Well, here's the thing. Speaking of NWA, Eric Bischoff said, what do they do when you take over a new company? What did he do? He cut all costs everywhere. So that's what they're doing with this Apex. They're saying, look, taking the show on the road's expensive. You got to get all kinds of different production. A lot of times you got to work with people in other cities rather than your people. You don't have the same control that you have at the Apex where you control everything.
Yep.
And they're just like, you know what? It's the cost to take it on the show on the road versus what we're doing here is, maybe we're even saving some by doing. It's not a big drop off. So for them, it's like we'd rather have the control. We'd rather cut down the costs. Just if the show on the road was making them this much versus this, then maybe they'd keep doing it. But they're pricing, you know what? It's not worth it based on how much you're paying to take the show on the road versus how much we're making. We just do the shows in the Apex.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's reflective too of the new paradigm of TV, right? Like boxing, like how do I say this? Old school boxing fights, you get a few of them on weekend network, but the rest of it, it wasn't the TV money, it was the attendance money, right? That's totally changed though. Now when you have a big event, it's different. But when you've got like a midline card, I can understand why Dana's like, I'd rather just have a TV show rather than a real live card. But when you don't have that, you miss a lot of that energy. And I think we saw it with Zuffa Boxing in their first few episodes.
Yeah, yeah. Plus, it's no one that you want to see. If it was someone that you wanted to see him, maybe it wouldn't be as big a deal. But when it's two people you don't care about and there's no crowd,
That's a problem. I'll tell
that's
you
a
what,
double
too,
win.
like you made mention of the control issue, man. I look, one thing about those guys, I guarantee you Dana White's a control freak. I don't know him personally, but I know people like that. I mean, it's guaranteed. So him having the apex where he feels like he has total control, he's going to go for that.
Oh, James was saying that James Wormy, he produced all the shows under SEG, and I think he produced the first 7 Zuffa shows. He said if I had an Apex where I had total control of production, I could use my people every time, almost like a home court advantage. Why would I not want to do that? He's saying the hassle factor is a word he has called hassle factor, where stuff comes up that causes a problem. He's like, you're not going to have that if you have your own home base where you guys have got this dialed in. Your production here, your control of where all the sound is, and that's you've already got that mapped out ahead of time. You don't have to work with some union in some city and have their people work on it and bring in their production trucks and hope they do stuff the way you want them to. He said, "Boy,
Yeah.
I would have loved to have that back when I was doing it." He was saying that.
Of course. I mean, listen, a Rock tour and the tour of the WWF or UFC is the same thing, right? It's a tour that they're going around putting on in different cities, and it's a pain in the butt. All that stuff logistically, it's a nightmare. I'm sure. And by the way, probably part of the reason I never got involved in that back end side of the game because that logistical nightmare is just that. It's a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, I think the White House thing. I'm still skeptical about it even happening because of that. And other things that are going on politically that could pop up at any moment that might make DKO reverse course on wanting to even do the show at the White House with all this Epstein stuff, and this all could blow up in people's faces over time. Now we're bombing Iran. Not that I don't find that a big deal. They're doing a good job of whacking people. They've got rid of a lot of people. They just got the supreme leader of Iran. They got this guy in Venezuela. They got um, El Mencho in Mexico. They got you know Hezbollah. They got the leader. They're doing this administration in Israel are doing a good job of knocking people out for sure.
And they said they weren't going to do that. I guess I remember that was, we're not going to be involved in foreign wars. Well, when you're wagging the dog, you got to be involved in foreign wars. Nothing to unite a country like a war, Todd. And
I
when
don't know if
you,
it is a war. You strike, you kill the guy immediately. What's the war? You just took out the supreme leader of Iran in one strike. What's left to do? You don't need to bring the ground troops in now. You gotta let Iran figure it out. Are the people going to rise up or not?
so that's a nice theory, but it's a little bit like the Dana White Zuffa boxing theory with Turki Alalshikh. Like, so now in Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, right, is the president. And what is going to be the real difference? I don't think there's going to be a difference at all. And
Mm,
suddenly you're going to see Trump not care about drugs so much anymore because that was just the excuse to go in, right? Like, what's going to happen over there? The Revolutionary Guard, like, has a stranglehold on that country, right? So it's not just one guy. There's going to be somebody else now,
mm-hmm,
in charge, and that same regime. Are they going to change it for good, or are they going to change it for bad? Remember when they put the Shah in for years, and finally they ran the Shah
mm-hmm.
off? I remember that. The Shah of Iran lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, not that far from me and my father when I was growing up. So I don't know, man. I mean, listen, it's definitely a new way to do things and seeing if it works. I don't know that overall it's going to be successful. Just like I don't know that Dana White's Zuffa boxing thing is going to be successful. But it's trying something new, and nobody knows what's going to happen, right? So they're letting it roll. We'll see.
Didn't you grow up with Shane McMahon?
Yeah, he was my neighbor.
What do you remember about Shane?
Shane was a bully. So it's funny. The kid who lived in Shane's house before Shane was named Charlie Bell. And Charlie Bell was the bully of the neighborhood. Then Charlie Bell moved out for whatever reason, and Shane McMahon and his family moved in. Now they were building their own, house in Greenwich, somewhere in the area. Like, so they were waiting they were just probably renting, or maybe they probably bought that house, right? They moved from Cape Cod though, because that's where Vince's dad started that wrestling business. And I hung out with Shane for a while. I mean, it was a solid 2, 3 years that we all played together in the neighborhood as kids. And Shane was the bully, and it was really cool. They had the wrestlers over on Halloween, like Roddy Piper and whatnot would open the door for trick or treating. And I even got to meet Vince once. He's exactly like his caricature is on TV. And he was, Vince was a giant bodybuilder back then. That when bodybuilding wasn't really in fashion. So yeah, man, it was an interesting life that I've had.
Crazy. You know, the NWA for me though, I think the reason the NWA survived, even though it was in the small, dimly lit southern arenas where no one was there, was they had a lot of talent that Zuffa boxing doesn't have. I mean, they had Ric Flair and Nikita Koloff and Andersons. They had all these guys that were really great, probably more talented than a lot of guys WWE had. They weren't
Well,
jobbers, that's for sure.
so let's talk about that. That's actually a good juxtaposition, Todd, because so what happened, right? It was a regional circuit, right? The NWA was like a parent company thrown over it, but everybody had their own regions, right? And what's happening, that's what boxing is. And what they're trying to do with Zuffa is the exact same thing that Vince McMahon did with it. So if you want to have a successful, past history of that, Vince McMahon successfully took over wrestling that way. Now, I think Vince had some luck. Do you know that Vince like essentially mortgaged everything for WrestleMania 1? And by the way, I was there in Madison Square Garden when Liberace was playing and Mr. T and Hulk Hogan took on Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. But if WrestleMania 1 had been a failure pay-per-view wise, the McMahons would have been done. And we might have been back to a regional wrestling circuit. So maybe, Zuffa will have its day like that too, but it's got to put on, I mean, it can't be one show anymore. Back then, one show once a year could capture the entire public. We're too greedy now with our time. We want immediate gratification all the time because of social media. I don't think there's one show you could put the greatest boxers in the world on for one night. Guess what? The next day we're going to wake up and go, "What's next?" We're just satiated with content, man.
Yeah, I think more people enjoy watching shorts than they really do watching videos. You know,
Guaranteed.
that's why you do good on TikTok. You know, because most of your TikToks are not real long. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and the funniest part about that, Todd, is I do that because I like just giving my opinion, getting it out, right? And I'm responding to the audience, so that's I think really an important part of the show. But unless it's a guy like you, I can have a really hard time on a show like you brought me in Hackelman on at the time. I couldn't stand that freaking guy. I
Yeah.
wanted to kill
Now tell people where they can find your stuff. And like I said, I like having Derek on. He's good at conversations about the sport. He has a lot of passion for it. Tell people where they can find some of the stuff you're doing.
Yeah, guys. My main stuff is on TikTok. At Derek Galanis. My book covering the fight game is Warrior of the Light: A Fighter's Journey Through the Rise of Mixed Martial Arts. You can find that on Amazon. If you're into the crime stuff, because a lot of people are, it seems the fight game and crime are never far from each other. You can find on Amazon my book Greed and Fear: The Galanis Crime Family. Has a lot of stuff about the Gambinos, Bill Clinton, and Hunter Biden and all that stuff in there. And I had a crime TikTok I did for a long time at Derek Galanis. But like I told Todd early on in this, I quit that once my brother got before Congress and Trump pardoned him. I got sick of the crime. My passion's the fight game. So yeah, see me on TikTok there. I put most of my stuff on Facebook, Derek Meyer Galanis as well, so you can follow it there. It seems the audience doesn't really react on Facebook as much as they do on TikTok, though.
Facebook's good about getting guests because I have a lot of people who don't follow me on Instagram necessarily, but if I add them as a friend on Facebook, they add me.
Right.
You know? So it's been helpful. I haven't really been using it for guests, but I have a lot of people that added me that I would like to have on my show. So I think there it's kind of helpful. Although you don't really have a guest show necessarily, but
Yeah,
which I think can be
I,
good.
oh, I don't know. Todd, I'm too controversial. I just say whatever's on my mind. And I think that can make you a pariah towards getting other people on your show. I mean, listen, most of the people I know about MMA, I tell the bare bones truth about them, right? They don't like that.
Yeah, but I even think fighters, most of the time you're going to get similar stuff out of them. As to where if you have shows, like I said, I have only about 6 I have my pantheon of shows, but those guys aren't fighters.
Right,
None of them.
right.
And there's a reason for that because their mind isn't really on fighting necessarily. It's more on other things related to fighting, but not. I have a fight coming up. I have a fight can't, there's only
Yeah.
so much you can discuss.
Fighters are boring. And I mean, they listen. I've always said that, like, fighters are Buddhist monks, right? Like, if you're a real pro fighter, you're training all the time. Your life's not exciting, right? The Conor McGregor stuff and the Nate Diaz stuff, that's just stuff on the side. And don't get me wrong, their personalities are really those people. But, like, look, the reason we haven't seen Conor fight in a million years, why? Because he's really partying like that now. The reason we haven't seen Nate fight, I mean, Nate is really an angry gang kid like that, but at the same time, Nate's made his money, and so he comes back when he can make more money, and otherwise he doesn't care.
Yeah. Well, Derek, as always, I appreciate you taking time to do this. People check out Derek's projects that he mentioned there. And I always appreciate people checking out the episodes. And until next time, see you later. Take care.